A hush fell over the hall as Zeus stepped forward, his presence radiating an almost tangible energy. He raised his hands and the air crackled with anticipation. "My fellow sunship," he began, his voice booming through the hall. "I see a future where Olympus is not confined to this single reality. I dream of a paradise that transcends dimensions, a beacon of light and order in the vast multiverse." His eyes gleamed with a fervent passion. Imagine a multiverse where chaos is tempered by order, where darkness is banished by light. Imagine a reality where all beings, regardless of their origin, can find peace and harmony under the banner of Olympus. He paused, letting his words sink in. "This is my vision, my fellow sunship. A vision of a brighter future, a future where Olympus reigns supreme, not through conquest, but through compassion and understanding." A wave of murmurs rippled through the hall, a mix of excitement and apprehension. Zeus's vision was bold, ambitious, but was it achievable? Was it the right path? Before anyone could voice their thoughts, a sudden disruption shattered the silence. A figure materialized in the center of the hall, his form radiating an aura of immense power, his eyes burning with cold fury. It was Pyrakmon, an extremely powerful sunship who sought to impose his strength unto the others and on reality itself. "Who needs a stone to dictate the leader?" he boomed, his voice laced with disdain. "Only might dictates rule." With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a surge of raw power, shattering the tablet of beginnings into 1,000 pieces. The fragments scattered across the hall, their ancient symbols extinguished, their wisdom lost. A collective gasp arose from the assembled sunship. The tablet, a symbol meant as a guide to their destiny, was gone. Pyrakmon, with his brazen act of defiance, had declared war, not just on Zeus, but on all sunship. The hall erupted in chaos. The sunship, their dreams of a peaceful transition of power shattered, instinctively reacted, their eyes burning with a mixture of fear and fury. Zeus, his face hardened with resolve, stepped forward, his quantum lightning crackling around him. "Pyrakmon," he thundered, "your terrorizing ends today." The other sunship echoed his defiance, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. "Silence!" Pyrakmon roared, his voice echoing through the hall with the force of a thunderclap. The sunship, momentarily stunned by his sudden appearance and the destruction of the tablet, fell silent. A wave of raw power emanated from him, a palpable force that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. Before any of the sunship could react, Pyrakmon unleashed his power. A blinding flash of light filled the hall, followed by a disorienting sense of displacement. When the light subsided, the hall was eerily empty. Most of the sunship had vanished, their forms swallowed by the chaotic energy that Pyrakmon commanded. Only 2 figures remained, standing amidst the scattered fragments of the tablet. Immortus and Baylus, their senses attuned to the underlying chaos of reality, had anticipated the attack. With a subtle shift in their movements, a mere flicker of motion, they had evaded the wave of energy that had consumed their brethren. And then there was another. Zeus, crackling with quantum energy, reappeared, seemingly unscathed. "You forgot me," he exclaimed, a defiant grin spreading across his face. Pyrakmon, momentarily surprised, let out a dismissive snort. "You are of no consequence," he scoffed, and with a flick of his wrist, banished Zeus to another dimension, turning his attention to the remaining 2 sunship. "Amusing," he said. Immortus and Baylus exchanged a worried glance. Zeus, powerful as he was, had been effortlessly dismissed. They were facing a foe of unimaginable power, a being who could manipulate reality itself. Yet they had survived the initial attack, a testament to their unique abilities. They had to find a way to use their strengths, their connection to the chaos, to outmaneuver Pyrakmon, to survive this encounter, and perhaps to find a way to rescue their fellow sunship and turn the tide of this unexpected war. Pyrakmon, intrigued by Immortus and Baylus' defiance of his power, focused his attention on them with an intensity that made the air crackle. He circled them slowly, like a predator sizing up its prey, his eyes gleaming with a cold, calculating light. "How?" Zrenia on Spasil. Immortus and Belus both explained their immortals. Ah, so you see the chaos, he mused, his voice a low rumble that echoed through the hall. Yet you cling to order? And you mimic the powers of others, yet you claim to have your own unique abilities. He paused, his gaze lingering on Himerus. Let us test the truth of your claims. With a sudden swift motion, Pyrakmon reached out and grasped Himerus by the throat. Himerus gasped, his eyes widening in shock, as he felt the immense power of the primordial energy coursing through him. But it wasn't pain that Pyrakmon inflicted. Instead, he forced Himerus to experience the full, unfiltered chaos of existence, the raw, untamed energy that underlay reality. Himerus cried out, his senses overwhelmed by the sensory maelstrom. He saw the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, the endless cycle of creation and destruction, all happening simultaneously, all around him. He felt the fabric of reality tearing at the seams, the boundaries between dimensions dissolving, the very laws of nature breaking down. It was a horrifying, exhilarating experience, a glimpse into the heart of existence that few sunship had ever witnessed. Himerus, his mind reeling, his body convulsing, felt his own identity dissolving, his sense of self fragmenting into a million pieces. Belus, seeing his friend's torment, lunged forward, his hands outstretched in a desperate attempt to intervene. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice raw with fear and anger. But Pyrakmon, unmoved, merely flicked his wrist, sending Belus crashing against a pillar. Belus slumped to the ground, his vision blurring, his body racked with pain. He could only watch helplessly as Pyrakmon continued his assault on Himerus, forcing him to confront the raw, unfiltered chaos of existence. Himerus screamed, his voice a tortured cry that echoed through the empty hall. He felt his sanity slipping away, his grip on reality loosening. He was drowning in the chaos, consumed by the infinite possibilities, the endless permutations of existence. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Pyrakmon released his grip, and Himerus collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, his body trembling, his mind shattered. He had seen the face of the abyss, and it had left an indelible mark on his soul. Pyrakmon, satisfied with his work, turned his attention back to Belus. "He will never forget this," he said, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "He will forever bear the scars of chaos, a reminder of his own insignificance." He stepped closer to Belus, his eyes burning with cold fire. "And as for you," he said, his voice laced with menace, "you will learn to serve me, or you will share his fate." Belus, his body aching, his spirit broken, could only remain silent. He had failed to protect his friend, and now he was at the mercy of a being who wielded the power of chaos itself. Belus, his jovial demeanour replaced with a trembling fear, felt a cold dread grip his heart. He wanted to defy Pyrakmon, to fight back, but the raw power he had witnessed, the ease with which Pyrakmon had dispatched the other sunship and tormented Himerus, had broken his spirit. He knew resistance was futile. He glanced at Himerus, his friend crumpled on the floor, a whimper escaping his lips, and a wave of guilt washed over him. He had failed to protect him, and now they were both at the mercy of this tyrant. I will go with you," Belus stammered, his voice barely a whisper. He couldn't meet Pyrakmon's eyes, shame and fear mingling within him. But just as Pyrakmon reached out to seize Belus, a weak, trembling voice cut through the tense silence. "No," Himerus croaked, his body racked with tremors, his vision still blurred with the remnants of the chaotic visions. "You won't take him." The words, barely audible, suspended in the air. Pyrakmon, Belus, and even Himerus himself were shocked by this sudden defiance. Pyrakmon, his hand frozen in midair, turned back to Himerus, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "What?" Pyrakmon boomed, his voice laced with incredulity. "You can barely move, let alone stand. How dare you defy me?" Himerus, with a monumental effort, pushed himself up onto his hands and knees, his body shaking, his eyes locked onto Uranus with fiery appearance. The chaotic vision, though agonizing, had also ignited something within him. He had seen the infinite possibilities of existence, the endless permutations of reality, and in that hell, he had found a strength he never knew he possessed. "You may have broken my mind," Himerus rasped, his voice gaining strength with every word. "But you have also shown me the truth. We are not mere pawns in your game, Pyrakmon. We are sonship, the children of the ineffable, and we will not be subjugated. He struggled to his feet, swaying slightly, but his gaze never wavered. You may have taken the others, but you will not take Balus. He is my friend, and I will protect him, even if it costs me my life. Pyrakmon stared at Himerus, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. He had expected fear, submission, but he found defiance, a spark of resistance in the eyes of a broken sonship. This unexpected turn of events intrigued him, and a cruel smile spread across his face. Very well, Pyrakmon said, his voice dripping with amusement. Let us see how far your defiance will take you. For now, Pyrakmon sneered, his eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. I'll take you both. He reached out with a speed that defied his immense size, his hand closing around Himerus's weakened form. Himerus, still reeling from the chaotic vision and the exertion of defying Uranus, was too weak to resist. He felt himself being lifted, his feet leaving the ground, his body dangling helplessly in Pyrakmon's grasp. Balus, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fury, instinctively reached for his weapon, a celestial blade. He wanted to fight, to defy this tyrant who had humiliated his friend and threatened to enslave them both. But the memory of Pyrakmon's overwhelming power, the ease with which he had banished the other sonship, held him back. He glanced at Himerus, his face pale, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and determination. Belus knew that any resistance would only result in further suffering for his friend, and perhaps a fate worse than Tartarus. With a guttural growl of frustration, Balus loosened his grip on his weapon. He lowered his head, his defiance masked by a facade of begrudging compliance. He would go with Pyrakmon for now. But he would not submit. He would bide his time, watch, and wait for an opportunity to strike back, to free himself and his friend from this monstrous captor. Pyrakmon, sensing Balus's inner turmoil, chuckled darkly. Wise choice, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He tightened his grip on Himerus, and with a swirl of chaotic energy, they vanished from the hall, leaving behind only the shattered remnants of the Tablet of Beginnings and a lingering sense of dread. Belus, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with a suppressed rage, followed them into the swirling vortex, his mind racing with plans for escape, for revenge. He would not rest until he had freed Himerus, until he had avenged the humiliation and suffering inflicted upon them. The journey into the unknown had begun, and Balus, though afraid, was ready to fight for his freedom, for his friend, for the very souls of his brothers.